Everybody, welcome to our fourth alumni session. It's called How to Stand Out in the Noise, and what it's really about is customer experience as opposed to customer service. They are different. Tracy is going to be talking to us today. Tracy is also our ops manager, but her claim to fame is that she's also known as the visualizer. Tracy has the unique ability to make complex concepts easy to understand, normally in the form of a picture or a diagram. Tracy is passionate about helping salespeople reach their full potential. And because she's so good at building effective systems, you always leave her workshops knowing how to implement what you've learned, as opposed to just theoretical learning. We love Tracy to bits. We really enjoy what she has to say. She keeps this business working, for which we are all very grateful. I'd like to let Tracy carry on from this point. Tracy, you're good to go.
I'm good to go. Thank you. And welcome to the people that have just come on. Really great to be here. All right. So about 2 months ago, my daughter went and I stay in Plet, and she went over to Cape Town, and she went with a group of friends with her to Comic-Con. Now, I know this is a bit of a strange story I'm telling you, but because the whole thing about what I'm busy with is customer experience, her story really just resonated with me, and I want to just tell you why. So my daughter, she's not that interested in the whole Comic-Con thing. She didn't dress up and everything, but a group of friends, and at varsity she was part of Guild, which was quite strange for me that she became part of Guild. But she became part of Guild in all these games. And of course, they would play D&D, which I know nothing about, but it was just a fascinating story. So Dungeons and Dragons, I don't know if anybody plays it or knows anything about it, but it seems to be really great in just the storytelling. And that is the part that I'm really most interested in. So she said to me that a friend of hers wanted to go and buy dice. Now, if anybody knows anything about D&D, it's about these dice, okay? So she went into, and the Comic-Con, if anybody's been, it's in this big auditorium there by in the Cape Town one, it's in the center there as you go in. And as she walked in, she said to me, it was just so strange because they went looking now for these dice. And so I just want to tell you her story. Okay. So where she went, the first one, there was 2 people sitting, really uninterested in what they were saying or what anybody was saying, anybody coming to the actual table, but they had the dice. So if you wanted to ask them anything, you had to interrupt their conversation they were having. So they just asked, okay, the price, and they're just interested looking at them, and they moved on. And it was 600 Rand for these dice, which sure blew me away that it would be so much money. But the next one, she said, we moved on to the next table, and this time a little bit up, they had these stands for the dice, but same dice. Okay, this is what I want to show you. But this time he had a stand. So he had a stand, the dice were on it. This time he was a little bit more engaged. So he spoke to them, he explained to them what the dice did, and he explained to them the pricing of it. But he was a little bit more engaged. The one I was interested in was the third one that she told me about. Now, this third one, what happened was they had built a whole story around the dice they were selling. So they had made characters around D&D. So, it's a whole world, and I'm not going to go into it because I would not do it justice. But what these guys had done was they had built their own characters. And they explained, so if they saw you looking at a specific character, they would then explain to you exactly why they got to that character, what it meant, and how it fitted into this. Now, where they were clever, they drew you into the story. They explained that each one of those characters was actually built around them. So whoever built the character, they built it around them, the characteristics of them as a person. Now, the interesting thing is they sold these characters. You could buy an A5 or an A4 copied sheet and for 100 Rand a pop. Now, I thought this was fascinating. So people were going to buy these pieces of there's something that they just printed, laminated. But now what they did was so clever. instead of just selling the dice, they took the dice and they said to you, okay, you can throw the dice, but you had to have bought something from them. Now you throw the dice, now you could get a discount on these dice that you were wanting to purchase. So what happened was they built an experience, they built a story, everything into what they were selling. Now notice all of a sudden the dice took on a slightly different role. People were buying these 100 rands worth of sheets or the characters in order to get a free throw. Now I found that very fascinating. Now Sky said to me as well, Mum, it wasn't just that you threw the dice. They had something on the table that what you did was you threw it into there and automatically it came out, and whatever, then you would get this discount. So this fascinated me on her story, because she told me about these other two and oh yeah, but they weren't memorable. And this other one, same dice, exactly the same price. But what they had done was so clever. Now they had the queue there. So people were buying. So they eventually made money on stuff other than the dice. Now, if you look at these three, and you can just put into the chat if you want to, of these three tables, which one do you think would have attracted your attention? Do you think one, where they were just sitting and having this fat conversation? Do you think two, where it was a little up? Or do you think drawing a person into a conversation, number three, which one do you think you would have been, if you were into D&D, which one do you think you would have been more part of? Or you would have been more prone to actually buy from? So just in chat, if you could tell me, 1, 2, or 3, which one do you think you would have gone? Okay, definitely 3. Okay, and now you notice that all they've done is added a story. They added interest. And you're drawn into a story. And this is what my whole thing is that's what we're talking about, standing out in the noise, is how do I stand out when your products look the same, when things look the same? And I think that to me is where my passion comes of. How do I look different in a world where all the quotes maybe look the same? All my products, commodity, what makes me stand out? And that's what I want to go through today. So I want you to think of some an event or something that you have been to just recently that you've got exceptional or the expectations were exceeded. So you went and you either bought something or you went to a restaurant, anything like that, where it was actually exceeded. Now, the sad part, I trained last week and we were doing customer service. And I asked the same question to the people that were on my training. And you know what the sad thing for me was? Most of them could tell me where they have been disappointed, but so few could tell me where it had been exceeded. And I think to me that was sad, where they could tell me exactly where they've been disappointed, because that's where we are most of the time. We just seem to be disappointed. Now, I want you to think of somewhere where it's been exceeded and somewhere where you've been disappointed. And I want you to think of the emotion you felt. What did it make you feel? So if you look at being disappointed, does it make you angry? I've just spent money and now this is the way you're treating me. Will I go back? In one of the training, the person said to me, it was a retail shop. They went in and the person was so disinterested and they were on their way to work. And this was the place they go and buy groceries. But because of the rudeness of one person, she decided she was going to change where she now does her monthly shop. The emotion of it is so strong. And I want you to think of that, where it's been exceeded and where you've been disappointed. Think of the emotion that plays a role. Where it's been a disappointment and you've had that real frustration, anger, irritation, will you go back? Now, sometimes we'll go back and we'll think, okay, well, let's just try again. Okay, let's just see. Maybe it was just a bad day of the one. But I want you to think how it made you feel when it was exceeded. Okay, did it put a smile on your face? Did you think when you walk away and you think, well, that was money worth spent? That was time worth spent? Because I think that's the big thing for me, is that it's a very different emotion that goes with it. And when I have had a meal or I've had something that where I have spent money and I feel like, sure, that was amazing, immediately the value plays the role. I could go to two places that the meal costs exactly the same, the coffee taste is exactly the same, but because of the experience, I don't mind, because there's a value attached now to that experience. Okay, so I just want you to keep that in mind, the emotion that you felt with the good and the bad. Okay, so think of that and when we move forward. Now, I want to explain to you how this has progressed. So, and I love coffee, and you'll see that whatever I talk about, but I want to bring it into a coffee where industrial economy says, I'm going to go and buy coffee. Okay, the industrial side just says, I go to a shop. I go and I look for the best price. Okay, if I like specific coffee, but I look for the best price that I can get. It's not really attached to an experience or anything. It's just attached to, okay, I want to go and pay the least price. When we move to a service economy, we want to make sure that there is the service, no doubt. But I go to a coffee shop, I expect, okay, my coffee will be, or I like a cappuccino, anything between 30, 38 Rand. I think, okay, well, that's not bad. The waitress comes, brings it to me. There's nothing really that draws me to the value. Okay, it's good coffee. I don't mind paying that amount of money. What I want to show you is, I don't know who lives in Cape Town, but there's a place called, and I hope you've had a good experience, because the one training I did, they didn't have, but Truth Coffee. Now, I want you just to think, this particular Truth Coffee, we went the once, and I haven't been for a while, but when we arrived, on the street, they were waiting in their whole outfits. Now, they have the whole steampunk thing going. So they were all in these outfits, and we were drawn to just that experience. We walked in, they told us about what we were going to experience, how the coffee was going to be made, all of this thing, and it led to the experience of the day. Now, what had happened was, it went from a coffee just being 30 Rand to a coffee a lot more. But because it was based on an experience, I did not mind paying that little bit more, because there was just something that went with it. I saw that as value, that I got that little bit of experience with it. So if I look at, if you look at customer experience and what we're heading to, yes, who's got their hand up? Someone got their hand up, or are they agreeing with me? Okay. All right. So when we look at experience, you can see there, if you just look, that says that your customers don't just want good service. Okay. They want good service, but that's not the only thing they want. Okay. They want to know that they are valued and understood. And I think this is going to be a big driver to today's talk. How do we make a customer of ours feel absolutely valued and understood in everything that we do? Because that's the important thing, and that's all we want. Now, I just want you to watch this very short clip, and I hope it plays. And all I want you to see is, if this was, because now I love this dad's reaction to this, but all this is doing, this is now these young guys have got on this, and all that it's doing is going up and down, and I want you to listen to the dad. And I'm not sure by now if you're just as bored as everybody else.
Trace, there's no sound coming through, love.
Is there no sound?
No sound.
Oh dear, okay, sorry about that. That's strange. Must be taking on my sound rather. Okay, so what the dad says is just going up and down. I'll just tell you. As it's going up and down, right at the end, and I did put the sound on from the video, but all that it's doing is, as it's going up and down, what the dad does is he just says to the young guy, is that all it does? Okay, because it's just going up and down. There's nothing to it. Now, what I want you to understand is, I want you to just think of your service. Now, in a customer's experience training, what I normally do is I get people to actually draw their roller coaster. What does their roller coaster look like? Is it just going up and down? There's really nothing exciting. Everything's just a little bit mundane, a little bit boring. You're doing the thing. Now, that's service. You're going up, you're going down. Really, there's nothing wrong with that. But what I want to show you today, there's another way. So if we look at what customer experience is how your customer feels about every interaction of your company. It's about exceeding your customers' expectations, and that's an important thing, exceeding the customer's expectations by paying attention to every detail of the delivery, products, and services. Now, there's something I want you to just take from today. Sometimes maybe you haven't got control of the whole line from beginning to end. Okay, so maybe there's parts that you think, oh, it could be done better, but you personally don't have any control over that. I want you to look at today, what part do you have control over that you can change and how you are with your customers? And small changes. See, I don't expect big changes. I'm just going to give you a few ideas of small changes. Now, I want you to just look at the Bain & Co. asked 300 companies and their customers. They went to them and their customers, and they asked them a very similar question. So the first question to the customer, or to the company, sorry, they said, are you delivering a superior customer experience? Now, if I ask, and I know Jean, I'm sure if he asks most of his students, are you giving good service? Are you giving an exceptional customer experience? They'll say yes to us. All right. So 80% of the company said, of course, we give great service. We give great experience. Customers love us. Now, I was challenged by a lot of the stuff I'm about to say to you, so I'll explain. Now what they did was they went to the customers of these people that said that 80% said that they give good service. And they said, are you receiving superior customer experience? I want you to take a guess. Now, just in the chat, what percentage do you think the customers said they were getting good experience, good service? Just give me a random percentage. What do you think? 40, okay. Anybody else? 10, another 45, okay. 20, 40, so a lot of 40, 45s around there, 35, okay. %, Stanley, I think you're being optimistic there. Okay, I want to tell you that those people that were 10% were more accurate. 8% of the customers said that those people, that the companies were giving them and what they felt. Now, you must remember, what is it that we feel we're giving compared to what the customer thinks we're giving? Okay. Now, that's important because the gap is pretty big. So if you look at 8% compared to 80%, there's a big gap there. Okay, and that's quite major. So what I want you to just look at, no, this was an overseas studies, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was similar. Because I do think that a lot of companies, and I do think a lot of people do overestimate what they think they give as value. Okay. If I ask for a quote and I get 3 exactly the same quotes, written the same pricing, which one am I going to go for? Because the minute there's 3 exactly the same, looks the same, etc., I'm going to go straight to price. And that is why we're doing what we're doing today, is how do I exceed that? So now you can see that it says there was a big gap where do we deliver great customer experience or do we think? And I think that's really important. And we need to talk to our customers and say to them, listen, overall, how are we performing? How are you think we're performing? Because we might be very surprised. And I'm talking from us as well, because as I said to you, I was challenged by a lot of what I'm going to be saying to you as well. Is what is that gap? Where is it that I'm thinking I'm giving good service, good experience? Now, service is one thing, but what is the experience I'm giving? Now, there's the gap also looks at things like misaligned perception of quality. Now, often John and I will get delegates, you say, what makes you stand out? They'll say their value is the quality or good service. Now, that is what you're saying, but do the customers perceive it the same? Okay, inadequate communication. What is my communication? Am I making people guess? So there's been a problem. Do I go back? Do I sort it out for them? Now, those are all experiences. Okay, so that's why I say it's not in the big things. It's in how does the customer feel in the interaction with us. And then customers are evolving, and we know this. We've come through COVID. We've come through so many things. You've learned it. If you've done any of our courses, we've spoken to you about how has the customer changed. And I think that's also very, very important. Sometimes we get this disconnect because we're not keeping up with how the customers are. Okay. Now, I love the saying, and you'll see if any of you have trained with us, this saying comes up quite often. But I've learned that people will forget what you said. People will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And this is what I want to make sure that we get right in this training or in the session, where we learn how do we exceed our customers' expectations. Now, how do we do this? Okay. We create a memorable experience by making genuine connections. We need to be genuine. Now, if I look at how do we do that? Okay. Oh dear, sorry. Now my presentation's not. Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Oh dear, I've just lost my presentation.
Oh, well done.
So just hold on quickly. Sorry about that. Just hanging. That's a bit embarrassing. Not a good thing.
Tracy, you didn't pay your homage to the presentation gods this morning.
That's for sure.
You're winning.
Yeah, I'll get there.
Folks, while we're chatting, we haven't locked the mics, so if you want to say something or you want to ask a question, please feel free to do that. You can unmute, and of course you can chat away in the chats. I am watching the chat line to see if there's any questions coming through that way. But please feel free to unmute, ask a question at this point or at any point, if you'd like to. There we go. Tracy, you back with us?
Let's see. I'm back. Sorry about that. I don't know what happened there. Okay. So I'm just quickly just putting my screens back now.
Okay.
I do apologize for that. I'm nearly back. Sorry, I'm back. Okay. Sorry about that. Gremlins in the presentation here. Okay, so we're just making the connections. It's about being genuine with our customers, making sure that our customer, that we don't put on that we're not who we say, say we're not. Because the thing is as well that they know when we're being genuine, when we really truly care for them, when we find that it, we give them the feeling of them being valuable. It has to come from a genuine place. So it's being genuine is very important. Being unforgettable. Now, this part I love is when the person thinks about your company, do they just think about the company, or do they think about you? And we do a clip in some of the training that some of you might have watched and it's about, I'll never forget that cup of coffee. And it's all about Lily and about how she serves him this cup of coffee. Now, the most amazing thing to me is he talks about, I'll never forget that cup of coffee, but he talks about Lily. He hardly ever talks about where Lily works. Okay. He talks about Lily, and that's the whole important thing is customers must feel that they want to deal with you and that you are unforgettable. The connection you've made is unforgettable. Now, it's about showing empathy, and it's about, showing people that you value the relationship with them. And that you care about them. Now, it's not please. When you care, I mean, it's just that you want the best for them. So you want to make sure that what you give them is important. When they're talking to you, they feel important. It's not a case where they think, and have you been into these shops where where you think, oh dear, I'm sorry that I'm interrupting you, They don't want to feel that. So that's really, so making sure you're genuine, unforgettable, show empathy. And then it's being part of the customer's story. And I love that because I love telling stories. So it's been part of their story, understanding the customer. And we always say, get into the shoes of the customers, understanding the customer. So we always say, be part of their story. And they'll come back when you're part of their story. And then it's about building trust. Now, what because I want to show you here is about how we think things have evolved so much. And if we look at it, because things have evolved, there's so much technology. Now, my pet thing is when you go in and you try and phone a bank, or you try and phone certain things now, or companies, you get, please dial 1 for this, but dial 2 for this, and you eventually never even get through to anybody. Or you've got the AI story with the bots. And you never get to talk to anybody. And you know what? People still want that human touch. They still want to know there's somebody out there looking after them. And I just find the minute you can show them that you care and that there's still that human connection, it's amazing how you can build the trust. Now, if you can see there, it says that Edelman, now he was a winner of a prize. And what he did was he said that 83% of people want compassionate connection. And I thought that was quite interesting because we think that everything's so evolved and people talk about AI is going to take your job soon and things like that. But actually, people still want that connection. And true in-person engagement allows people to build connection and create empathy. And again, most decisions we make are based on our memories of past experiences and or our expectations of future experiences. Now, think back to when I asked you to think of a good and bad experience. Okay, that's what they're talking about. When I go and I need to purchase something, I've had a good experience. I think I can only go to that place. We don't want them to go the opposite, when now we say, oh, I don't want to go to that place. Okay, so we want them, and that comes from past experiences. How have I been treated? Have I been valued? So many of you also that have done any training with us will know we speak about the human brain. Now, that first part where the amygdala, which is really the fight and flight part of the brain, where we talk about where that's how we form the trust. Now, if people don't trust you, they never move from this part of the brain. And we want them to move. And where we form connection is in the emotional part, okay, in the limbic system. That is where we build connection. That's where people like you. Now, we don't want them to stay in emotion. We really don't. But we've now, when we've been able to go past that first part of the brain, now they feel they can trust you. That's why when you get a call that is a telesalesperson, you either fight or flight, okay, because you've heard the story before. You don't want to be in this conversation because they're trying to sell you something. And that's what we don't want our customers to feel. So then you get the other part, which goes more into the emotional. We want to move away from that part. Then we go to logic. Now they make the decision based on, they feel comfortable with you, they can trust you, they like you, and now we form of, okay, I now can believe what you're saying. And that's why we always talk about this in our training on the brain, because, you know, we don't realize how much is played on the brain of looking at the fight and flight. And sometimes we never get past that. And we wonder why we're just not getting business. Oh, there's just no business in South Africa or whatever. Or our customers are just going to other places, etc. And it's because we keep them in fight and flight instead of moving them on. And customer experience, that's what we want to do. We want to move them. We want to move them to something different. Now, again, this particular one, I love this mapping the journey. Now, the important thing for me is where we sit and where we do incredibly well is the first 2 tiers. We do very well with understanding customer needs, well, most of us. Okay, some of us have a bit of a, we don't listen to our customers. We're so busy in our world. The second part is, how do we match it now? How do we match what we sell to the customer needs? The part I want to speak in today, and we are moving forward, and I'm going to show you how, is about looking at how do I add something more? How do I add something more to the conversation? How do I make my customer want to come back? And then it's about making it personal. How do I personalize what I'm talking about? And I want to show you in the next slide, or going forward, how this happens. Now, the slide says, make the moment worth sharing. Now, I love this where this particular test was done, but this is what this guy talks about, is about how our brains can't remember everything. Now, you know, if you've got so much on your plate, you are so busy, you cannot remember everything. And things slip through the cracks. It's because we can't remember everything. But I want you to know that our brain takes shortcuts, and there's certain parts of the experience that people will take away. And so you can see there, the more intense that it is, the recent feeling, and the more memorable the experience, they hook onto that. These findings are the foundation of what we call the peak and end rule. Now, this is quite important. Remember, I showed you that clip and it just went up and down. There was nothing exciting about it. It just went up and down the ride. There was nothing memorable. So when the person walks away, when they walk away, they say, oh, okay, well, that was okay. It was good service. But if I had to ask them now in a class like I did you, would you remember it? Okay, so what we want to do is we want to look at those 2 points. So this is an interesting stat. The peak end rule is looking at how 20% of our connection with our people, okay, so 20% of your experience drives 80% of what your the customer's memories of the experience are. That's scary. So if you think about if you went into a shop and it was just a quick you went into the shop, it was just very quick, and the person was quite rude to you, you can imagine that little bit of interaction with the customer, how much it played a role in 80% of your memory. Well, that's quite a scary thought. Okay. So now what happens is, if we have this great interaction, the customer experience, now it creates customer loyalty. People want to come back to me. And also we create advocates. Now I want you to hear that word, advocates, because what is the best way of getting business? Word of mouth. Okay, so now all of a sudden I'm telling somebody else about the connection I had. Now this is how this rule works. Basically, if you look there, there's one part, and people will remember a really, really good part of interaction with you, and they'll remember the end. It's like pudding. You always remember that end part of the meal. So if that pudding wasn't good and you've had a great meal, you remember that pudding. So what we want to do is, and this is where we're going to head now, is we want to make at least something memorable. We want to add something that is memorable in our connection, in how we're connecting with our customers. As you can see that the second line is just mundane. There's nothing that stands out. So that is why we call it a peak end rule. Now, I want to take you to a story that I had read in this one book, and it was talking about how to make moments for customers. And they spoke about the power of the free Popsicle. And I love the story because it was all about a hotel. And you can see there it says the Magic Castle Hotel. And if you want to go look up about it, it is not anything exciting. It was a block of flats that changed into a hotel. The decor is quite boring. There's nothing spectacular about it. But what they did was they made moments. And outside by the pool area, they had what we call the Popsicle Hotline. And you could phone and get somebody to bring you a popsicle. Now, what happened was the kids loved this phone. So they would go in and they would then go and make the call and get their popsicle. But I'll show you now how it came. But this was about crafting a unique moment. Okay. And now what he says in this book, he says, create a moment, earn a memory. And I love that. How do you create that moment that earns the memory that the customer thinks, oh, I want to go back? And that is really, really important. And I want you just to think creatively a moment of what are those moments. And I'm not saying to you now, go and give popsicles, okay? What I'm saying is you need to understand that it's all about the moment. So it could be, and I've mentioned to people, it actually could just be a simple email that says, how are you doing today? That is just a simple moment. Okay. Now, when the popsicle comes, you can see they've got white gloves and they bring it on a tray. And they come and they've got that moment where now this is now something special that they've given. Now we talk about these different defining moments, but what I want to, and you can just go through, it's about elevation moments, when just that special memory, just something that is out of that the customer surprises the customer. It's an insight moment. It could be a moment of pride where you guys have achieved something and you tell your customer about it. And then the moments of connection. Now, I want you just to talk about this framework. Now, it's called the innovation framework. And what happens is when we do innovation, we do a workshop about innovation. And what we say to our customer, or we say to the delegates, what we want you to do is that we want you to brainstorm. You're going to put as many ideas down, then you're going to get into groups and you're going to come up with another 5 ideas. Once we get them to brainstorm as much as possible, we call it kick out the box, where now they've got to come out with ideas they've never thought of. Now, that's why it's called innovation. You're going to think of moments that you can think of for the customers and in part of whichever the connection is that you have with them. And that's why I said it doesn't necessarily have to be across every part, because maybe you can't, as I said, it's out of your control what the next person does. But in your control, I want you to think of those moments, just of special things you've maybe sent in a mail. It's not, and that's why I'm trying to emphasize, it's not in the big things. It's in the things they feel like, sure, that was a surprise. Now, when we define the customer experience blueprint, we need to know, and again, across any of our training, you'll know we talk about understand who your customer is. And that is really important, is truly understanding your customer can help you make sure that you give a great experience. Okay, so it's defining who your customer is. The next part is the customer journey, understanding the end-to-end. And I'm going to talk into this, which is really, it might be quite an eye-opener because it was for me. But it's what is the customer journey already? How are they interacting with you as a company or you as the salesperson? And then the last one is about how do I define or design my customer journey or the actual, and now put the blueprint in place. So finding out about the customer is all about asking relevant questions. Okay, how would you describe who they are? So if you look at the people in the hotel, I mean, it's holiday makers or business people. It could be what motivates them. What are their goals? What they need from the service and why they need the service. What do they find frustrating? I mean, that we look at within the training, building this whole profile of who my customer is and truly understanding them and asking the right questions. Once I've done that, I want to just look at the discover part, because this was the part that actually was a aha moment for me. I want you to look at what is the customer's journey end to end, understanding end-to-end experience. Now, if we look at the hotel, I'm just going to use, please put what you think. Now, think about your business and think about the experience of your customer. Now, let's look here. So the hotel says, well, it's from the booking accommodation, checking in, then maybe the room, the extras, meals, etc., and the checking out. That's where I've got to create the experience. So I need to look at which one of those can I build an experience into. This is what blew me away. They said sometimes we don't really truly understand the customer's experience. So let's look at a true customer end-to-end. If I look at that holiday, where does it start? It does not start at the booking accommodation. It starts when I start investigating or when I feel like I have a need for a holiday. Are we there? That's our website, all of that type of thing. So it's the desire for their holiday. The next thing is the plan, the trip. So you can see the customer has a much bigger end-to-end than what we think. It could be afterwards. It could be, you can see their travel home. Is there something we could explain to them? Is there something that maybe goes beyond? Now, if I look at our training, and it's something maybe Jean, you and I could chat about sometime, but where does our end to end? So we look at the customer and we think, okay, fine, they've sent us the feedback form, we send the certificate. Are we missing it though? because maybe there's something afterwards that we're not seeing. What is the whole thing afterwards? Now, this could be the travel home. It could even be, how do they explain the memory of what they've just had? And this to me was just a bit of a aha moment to me. We think customer experience end to end is on our side. What I want you to start looking at is the customer side. Where are we missing gaps? Where are we actually not realizing there could be other things after the experience? So what are the things that I need to now put in place to put maybe another experience in place that other companies haven't thought of? So what I want to look at here, where it says many times the end-to-end customer experience is not the same for the company as for the customer. And that's what we want to look at. What gaps, and the framework that I've just shown you looks at what are the gaps that I need to look at? What reveals the gaps, the missed opportunities? Now, remember, there was a third one. We need to design. So the first thing we're going to look at is who's my customer. We're then going to look at where are these gaps? What is their end-to-end? But what is their end-to-end? Not just our end-to-end. And we look at it and look at the missed opportunities. And now we ask ourselves questions. We say, okay, so how can you positively surpass the customers in unexpected ways? What are those Popsicle moments that you could give your customers? What do customers think about it should happen? What has to happen for the customer to be satisfied? Those are sort of questions that we would ask, and we can design our framework. How can we make it better? We can even look at, maybe sometimes we've got to look at the negative. Okay, what stops customers interacting with us, buying from us, going to to a competitor? So that is the framework I want you to just to look at, is understand the customer. What is the things that I can put in place? What's that end to end? What's the experience that I need to truly look at? And then how can I design this? And then again, it's about customer experience influence. It influences our emotions, which then drives the behavior towards the company, which then delivers the results. Okay, so I just want to end this with you, where if we look at this, the experience, what it influences, the emotional connection, if it's positive, people are drawn back to us. Okay, so then the behavior is they want to come ask us questions. They want to engage with us. They trust the brand. And then the last one is, okay, so what is the result? The result is they want to come back to you. And I just want to leave that with you, how important that interaction and the customer experience is versus just service. Okay, and that comes to the end of my little thing, or my webinar for today, and what I wanted to share with you. But I hope you can take something out of it, that actually it's not just about service. It's about going the extra mile. It's about how does customers feel about the interactions with me. Okay, so I hope everybody okay. Everybody, any questions out there? Everybody okay? Yes. Is that a question or?
Yes, it is a question. And thanks so much. It was very informative. It's really made me think a lot. I just wanted to ask a question from a, going the extra mile perspective. Where's the point of going the extra mile versus the point where you're giving away some of your IP and services for free? Because I found that customers also do enjoy getting free consulting and free IP and free and all that. So I'm just trying to figure out, like, where is that tolerance of where one should stop?
Okay. What we normally look at is, yes, there is that experience, but there is a give and take. So the problem is sometimes when we give too much, the customer just expects. And there has to be that place where, okay, I can give you an hour of consulting, or like what we do with coaching, etc. But then we need to look at, okay, 5 hours of coaching or 4 hours of coaching. We have to make sure that our customers understand there's also a give and take. The thing is, when we give that surprise moment, or we understand how the customers are reacting to, and they trust us, the value of what you're offering also goes up. So it could be as well, sometimes, and I do understand customers want lots for free. I mean, we see it, and we at one time were giving too much and we had to pull back. That eventually we had to say to the customer, okay, it's fine, we can help you in this, but then you need to come to the party and you need to be able to, you need to then make sure that then, so if it's an hour that you need of consulting, that, and you can't always guarantee it, but if you're giving enough value, you want that customer to come back to you. Jean, do you want to say anything here?
Yes,
this is also something you train.
Tracy, I was thinking about that from our perspective, and again, and maybe the story here is my attitude is that I'm prepared to give of myself as long as it doesn't affect the company's revenue, other than in a positive way. So I will go out of my way to help people because I've got a lot of experience in sales. I can take a case that can come to me where they've got a situation where they don't quite know what to do, and I'll talk them through what might work. Okay, and I'll give them the benefit of my experience. And that'll take maybe 15, 20 minutes, maybe half an hour of my time, and I don't mind doing that. And I like to believe that the people that come on my training value that possibility, that if they've got a specific case they want to discuss with me, I'm happy to talk to them about it. Costs me half an hour. But if they're asking me to solve a systemic problem or to make a big change, help them manage a big change, that is something the company does, and that's a consulting scenario, and that's a very different conversation, because it doesn't involve me. It involves me and Tracy and Tim and all the other people involved in SI. So a lot of my value in my sales career has been the fact that people like dealing with me, because I try and go a step further. I'll fight a battle for them. I'll go to war with my finance team for them. And they'll buy from me because it's me, rather than buy from me because of who I work for. I don't know if that makes any sense to anybody. Does that answer your question, kinda? Does it kind of answer the question?
Yeah, I think it gives me a bit more context. It's always, you have to also look at it in context to a new customer and the hunting scenario, and how you set boundaries with customers relative to your relationship with them. It's a lot easier when you're farming and you've built relationships and you know the type of person you're dealing with and you know where that give and take is. But
Yes.
it is challenging when you're trying to establish the boundaries of a new relationship, and you at the same time want the deal, but you also don't want to set the precedent of just being a pushover. So
Yes.
you want to be strong enough to put down the barrier and say, look, this is what we can offer you, and there's a deal sweetener.
Yes.
But that's as far as it goes. Because I've also found, and we've going through quite a lot of our own sales reinvention here in our
Yes.
organization, and that's why this is top of mind, is that you want to also, teach your customer how to treat you.
Yes.
And I say that with respect, because
Yes.
sometimes if those boundaries are not set up front, you be just, they walk all over you. But at the same time, there needs to be an equilibrium in terms of, the give and take of the relationship. So yeah, I hear you.
I want to extend on that for you. In your negotiations for new business, if you're gonna give us deal sweetener of any kind, you must get something back. That's basic. That's fundamental negotiation skills. That's not really what we're talking about here.
I think the big thing for me is, as well, you've got to make sure that the sales experience is just something that builds trust. All it's doing is it's making sure you stand out from the crowd. If you've got 3 people you're dealing with, but they're all identical, there's nothing that stands out. What happens is you go to price. What you want to do is form trust so that the customer trusts you enough to come back to you. So that's the big thing about experience, is that it just is, how do you exceed, and it's not giving away, it's how do you exceed the customer, that the customer feels like they can trust you. I think that's the big thing. But the give and take's very important. And so it's not about just being when you form that relationship, it's they can trust you, but they still you do need to set the boundaries. And there's sometimes where, we've said, okay, we could do this for you, but or they wanted a decrease in, or they want a percentage off, etc., where we've said, okay, that's fine, but then we have to remove something from the quote. And so what happens is we're saying, okay, it's not just a case of we're just going to give you the discount, like the typical gym memberships where they'll just say, oh, well, we'll go to the bus and get you a discount. There's always that give and take. So we've got to show them that your interests are, we've got your interests at heart, but we also have boundaries that we have to set around that. That's quite important.
Agreed, Tracy. And you're dead right. If you can't differentiate yourself in some way through the experience, then it becomes a price argument, and then you're on a race to the bottom. You can't win that. You cannot win a price argument. There's always going to be some turkey that will do it for cheaper than you.
Yeah, and yeah, it's price. It's what kind of organization are you? Are you an EME or a QSE? Where does their spend lie? What is your BEE level? There's so many different factors, Yeah, so I agree. And I guess the takeaway for me is really around, how do we make that experience not fake, something that's resonates with our organization, so it's authentic, but it's different at the same time. And it almost enhances and highlights who we are and what we bring to the table, because then it's very difficult to replicate, right? Because it's individual to the culture of that business.
Exactly right. You got it. You got it.
I like that, definitely. Anybody else with a question or anything to just add? Doesn't have to be a question.
Okay. Trace, I'm going to wrap up if you're okay with that.
No, we're fine, because I think it's
All
getting
right.
time past.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. You will get a copy of the recording if you've registered, and those people are your colleagues that couldn't make it. They will get a recording of this.
Thanks,
Thanks. They will get a recording of this this webinar. I'd like to announce our next webinar will be on the 17th of July. We are proud to introduce you to Gary Tintinger. He is an associate of the Sales Institute, but he's also the chairman of the Johannesburg chapter of the Public Speakers Association. He's going to be talking to us about the 3 C's of persuasive communication. Now, we're all salespeople here, and persuading people is what we do, right? So what are the 3 C's of persuasive communication is what Gary will be talking to us about on the 17th. Tracy and I are committing to get the invites out during the course of the next week. So between now and this time next week, those invites will be out. Please join us. Please invite your friends, your relatives, your colleagues, your bosses. It's going to be fun, I hope. No, I believe it's going to be fun. So please join us and talk to people about what we're doing. We'd love to have your friends and people here with us. Okay. Tracy,
Thanks,
anything else you want to add?
No, I think that's it. Thank you for joining us. I know you're all busy, but thank you for taking this time out to join us. We've really enjoyed the time with you guys as well.
Take care, folks. We'll talk to you in a week.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thanks.
Bye. Stop recording, Tracy.